Festus the Leechlord. We now know him to be the Nurgle champion coming in the new Champions of Chaos, DLC that's going to be hitting Total War Warhammer 3 come August 23rd. And in this video today, I'm going to be doing one of my old school style of lore videos. I'm just going to straight up read and show the 8th edition Warriors of Chaos army book. We're going to read exactly from that lore, and it's like 3, 4, 5 paragraphs long, and then we're going to talk about the actual rules of Festus from the tabletop and kind of talk about how they've made their way into Total War Warhammer, because we know already kind of how some of his rules are going to be working as far as his special rules, but he does have some magic items, or at least one to take a look at, and then we're going to talk a little bit about his starting position. So we're going to go through all that here today. Again, this is one of my standard fare videos. We've done one of these for Azazel already. I've done one for Village and for Valkia. The two other characters I think will be landing for Champions of Chaos. Really the kind of the motivation behind that is looking at what characters are in the 8th edition army book. And like if you look at Scylla Angfingrim is the other Champion of Khorne character, who actually I think is a demon. Nope, he's not by special rule by looking at it. It's just a monstrous beast. And the other one is Valkia. So, okay, those are our two options for Khorne. And the other Tzeentch character is Village. There's the Changeling, and then there's other characters, but the Changeling is actually in the Demons of Chaos book, I believe. So Village was my my kind of option here for Tzeentch, just by looking at that 8th edition Warhammer 8th edition Warriors of Chaos army book. Well, I've shown that I can read, so without further ado, let's jump into our video here today. If you do end up enjoying this video, guys, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Each one of those things helps out any content creator that you watch out in some varying way, shape, or form. But let's get started here on Festus the Leechlord, Dark Apothecary, the Fecundite. This is going to be pretty low tech. I'm just going to straight up do a screen share and do it this way. But again, this is Festus the Leechlord here. So if an unfortunate traveler were to stray into the twisted roads that led from the northern forest into the chaos wastes, he might be paid a visit by a most unsavory individual during the dark of the night. A shuffling, muttering figure stalks these lands, his moth-eaten robes gently clinking with vials containing unimaginable concoctions, which he is seeking to test out upon those he can catch or deceive. A devotee of the plague god Nurgle, this mysterious apothecary is quite mad, though he once bore the respect of physicians, alchemists, and scientists across the length and breadth of the old world. Dr. Festus was once a skilled chirurgeon who founded hospices all along the province of Nordland and was as compassionate as he was gifted. Specializing in curative unguents and salves, the good doctor cured hundreds of people every year. With Festus's guidance, Nordland overcame outbreaks of the screaming ague, black leg, and even the crippling ghoul pox. It was the onset of gnashing fever that marked the beginning of the end for Festus. Try as he might, the doctor could not stem the spread of his new and highly contagious disease. Festus locked himself in his laboratory, working ceaselessly to create a healing elixir. Countless sleepless nights passed, and despite his best efforts, Festus still had no cure. Those plague victims he had managed to sequester in his laboratory were dying, and he was powerless to prevent it. As the last of his test subjects shook themselves to death, Festus dropped to his knees, crying out for help. One by one, the slack-jawed corpses in Festus' laboratory turned their heads to look at him. With one voice emanating from a score of parched throats, they promised to give Festus the knowledge necessary to cure not only this plague, but all the diseases in the world in exchange for a lifetime of service. In his desperation, Festus agreed. In the blink of a bloodshot eye, Festus's mind was filled with every detail of every sickness, ailment, and plague known to the great god Nurgle. This drove him entirely mad, washed away his compassion, and left nothing more than an inanimate knowledge of disease and a desire to experiment. Festus became the Leechlord of Nurgle, who goes to war in the name of furthering his revolting studies. Though his curative powers are greater than ever before, woe betide the fool who crosses the doctor, for he is always in need of new subjects, and not above force-feeding his latest concoctions to his victims in his quest to bring ever more repugnant forms of life into the world. It is a better fate by far to die on the field of battle than to be captured alive by Festus and used for his latest experimentations. You can see here that Festus is disgusting. And if you look at his picture, it matches pretty well with the CG picture that we've seen here, right? From the picture we've already kind of seen of this character. And he's exactly what you would expect. He is a Lord of Nurgle wizard. He's a caster. He is not a combatant. And if we take a look at his stat line, he's got 4 weapon skill, which is pretty small. Remember, weapon skill in this game is basically the same thing as roughly as melee attack. If melee attack is the ability to hit something, same thing with weapon skill. But he does have 4 strength and 4 toughness, so he's got some kind of durability. With 2 wounds and 2 attacks. So again, very much a caster. So Festus the Leechlord is a level 2 wizard. He uses spells from the Lord of Nurgle. Now his special rules are Eye of the Gods, Mark of Nurgle, Poisoned Attacks, and Regeneration, which are 2 things I would expect him to have on his profile. At least just Regeneration. Poison Attacks might not be something that they kind of factor into the character, and that's fine. Maybe it's going to be relegated to a specific item or a specific... Actually, you know how I could see Poisoned Attacks and Regeneration added into him if it's not on his default profile? By his special skill line, right? Like, you know how every legendary lord has that very top end skill line that like will grant, hey, your whole army has flaming attacks, stuff like that. I could see them layering in poisoned and or regeneration into there if he doesn't have it by default. Now we know these next 2 things are in the game. Harbinger of Pestilence, whilst Festus the Leechlord is in a unit, all models in that unit have the poisoned attack special rule, something that we have already seen his character already having. As far as his faction effect goes, with vassals, remember the poison attacks apply to the vassals, and then healing elixirs, whilst Festus the Leechlord is in a unit, all models in that unit have regeneration plus 5 special rule. So now how they've done this is Harbinger of Pestilence or healing elixirs are 2 activatable passives for Festus. Activating one, they're mutually exclusive, right? So you can only have one active over the other. Harbinger will do damage, healing will heal. So I like how they've envisioned that. Whereas this one is, it gives poison attacks and regeneration to a unit, which is pretty strong. But this, I think, is a nice, it kind of the same feeling here, but not as broken, because in a single unit having it, that's fine. But there's nothing in the game in Total War Warhammer that would have a 1-to-1 with in a single unit, right? It's always like a 30 or 50 meter radius ability, and we see that represented now with either an AoE damage or an AoE heal, which I really like. Now his magic item here though is the Pestilent Potions. Festus is a walking repository of alembics and foul smelling potions. To one blessed by Grandfather Nurgle, these elixirs are restorative brews, but to others they are deadly poisons. So let's see how this works. So he can drink it, in which case he will immediately regain a single lost wound or try to force them down the throat of a single enemy model in base contact. If he attempts the latter, both players roll a d6 and add their... Okay, so basically he can do d3 wounds to someone. So we see the potion being a bigger part of the trailer, right? The potion's in the trailer and he's always looking at the potion. He's like jerking it off and like throwing it all over the place. So I do hope that he has some form of perhaps potion mechanic. Now, they haven't mentioned anything about that in that blog post, right? It just talks about the fact that he can brew plagues, but we don't know about any kind of campaign-specific mechanics for him. Do we know any for Azazel? I think it goes through more of the Warriors of Chaos mechanics for him and not for specifically Azazel. So I don't know if he will get a brewing potion mechanic or if he'll have something with potions. Maybe that's his items. He gets a bunch of different potions he can use, whatever it is. But I would love to see potions making their way into a Festus the Leechlord kind of playthrough or what have you. But let's now kind of switch gears here and talk about the newly released starting location for him here on the Immortal Empires starting map, the Immortal Empires map. So here we go. Here we are, we're on the map. Now remember, Azazel is right over here, just north in the mountains of Naglfari. And we're gonna be seeing this guy at the Brass Keep. Now, the Brass Keep is a pretty interesting situation. It's something that's kind of bounced around as far as its ownership goes. In the middle mountains over here, right above Hawkland. Now, the Brass Keep itself is kind of gone, it's been captured by this, by that, by this, by that. And during the time of the Three Emperors, which is a pretty wild portion of Empire history when there are literally 3 emperors. Ostland lost the Brass Keep to an Orc Wa, and then the Reichland Emperor, which of course becomes the Emperor eventually down the line, that becomes like the main deal, sends his son to kind of take it back. And when he retakes the keep, Mordek is his name, eventually falls to Nurgle. And then he becomes Count Mordek the Damned. And from here, the Great War of Chaos starts off, and this is where we get the Blight Kings. The Blight Kings have become like kind of the champions of Nurgle and so on and so forth. But it makes sense then to see Festus over here as far as like how that lore progresses. There is a Nurgle presence in this location, and it does add it has a pretty provocative place for Chaos to be completely surrounded. So I'm really curious to see what kind of mechanics he has to maybe combat the fact that Draika is right there, and both Kislev's lords are just to his northeast. He does have the ability to ally maybe with Khazrak, and he does have just to the north Azazel, but I'm kind of curious if we'll see any of the other lords around here. And remember, I talked about Kadatha, and Kadatha being the location where we get the place that is important, Zanbaijin. And I made that circle in my lore Q&A video. I was like, all right, if this is the furthest west, and I kind of made the statement of, if we're only looking at Azazel's start location, and let's assume that that's the furthest west starting location, let's make a circle out from Kadatha. And this is basically in line with that circle. That circle pretty much just went right down here, through here, and then back around, right? So I bet fucking you, we'll see Valkia down here somewhere, and we'll see Village over here, because those are the 2 I'm saying will be the Khorne and Nurgle legendary lords. Of course, we have tons of other lords for Khorne and for Tzeentch. Did I say Tzeentch? Village Tzeentch. That could be possible, but I've been big on Valkia and Village from the start, and I think everyone else is. I think those like Valkia, I think is like the fan favorite of the Lord of the Champions of Chaos period. So I think it'd be stupid not to have her in here. So let's just say Bone Road or Wolflands or Blasted Wastes. One of these 3, I bet you, will be probably it's about in line with that circle too. I think that'll be kind of the ideal location for a Valkia. And then Village, well, maybe Village, I say Village in the Eastern Steppes just to put him in that circle, but that might make him way too close to Kadatha. And I'm assuming that Zanbaijin is a part of their campaign objective. I mean, if I look at Village, he would just have a mad dash right to it, right? So maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe Village should be more south over here, but still, that's not that much in his way. Same thing with like a Valkia would not have that much of a deterrent. Now, when you place Chaos Dwarfs on this map, whenever the hell that happens, if it happens, I think it's happening. We all think it's happening. That makes these starting locations down here a little bit more treacherous, but nothing quite as dense and as scary as this, dude. Like, look at this. Festus has to go through some pretty wild order tide to get over into this. And then he also has to deal with Skaven and with Greenskins, assuming he can maybe ally with them. So it's going to be interesting to see how the mechanics for Festus allow him to live in a place like this. I think his plague spreading is going to be crucial to the starting location, but I think by and large, he's pretty well impacted in the Immortal Empires start location. But go ahead and let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Are you liking this Festus start location? Are you excited for Festus? Are you excited for Azazel? Are you more excited for the Khorne and or Tzeentch legendary starts? I mean, I would love to see, a lot of people want Ergrim von Horstmann. I would love to see Angra Deathsword as a character in general just added into the game, even though he's already dead, but that's not really stopped anyone. But go ahead and let me know in the comment section below how you're feeling. Hopefully you enjoyed this kind of just old school style lore video for Festus. Just kind of wanted to give some information out there because I've done videos on all the other ones, so I might as well do one for Festus. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.